Hello, everybody. Welcome to our penultimate show. I am one half of your host, JB, and with me is the other host, the host with the most, the fighting man, Mr. Mark Marsh.
Everybody.
Hey, so this is like I was gonna say once more with feeling, but it isn't because we're gonna do a Q&A next time. So there is still time to submit Q&A questions. Either leave them in the comment section of this video or go find our numerous posts talking about it because I want to make that like a super show. We might even need two recording sessions from that because we have got an influx of questions
And it is
coming our
literally,
way.
you can answer any questions.
Yeah.
I'm literally accepting any questions. I don't care how vile they are. I don't care what
Yeah,
type of
we
questions
need
you have.
everything.
Ask them and I'll
Any
gladly do it.
question. And it's kind of mad because we got one that was a little bit rude that got me thinking about like not like rude as in like explicit or R-rated or blue in any way, but like it was something along the lines of these BAM videos do way better than the interviews. Why would you end the BAM and not end the interviews? And I was kind of thinking to myself, well, why would we end the BAMs? But then, like, I still love this so much. I kind of want to leave it while I love it, and it's been great. Versus, like, we're on episode 100, and we're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to talk about this time? We're nearing 30. Like, what are we going to do? Like, my back hurts recording this much. So, it's a valid question that maybe I'll get into more detail about, but. I'm happy with this, although it's like Sod's Law. The second we're on episode 49, and this is basically our last topic before a Q&A. So this is our last Scooby-Doo discussion. Ad hoc, we'll probably get some Scooby-Doo questions in the filth, so like we can like discuss things then. But then I got thinking about five more topics, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So who knows? Maybe, I mean, we've already agreed on a previous show to reunite in like, what was it, 2066 when Scooby-Doo goes into public
Yeah.
domain. So we've got one on the way, which I'm almost certain I don't make it for. But the topic for this time is Scooby-Doo canon. If someone could go from start to finish on a Scooby-Doo timeline. And I know that this is quite conflicting within the fandom. There's people like Ashton Hardy who made a fantastic podcast series trying to detail all of them in timeline order. But there's also some people like a nerd sync who has come out publicly to say that trying to detail everything together on what means more means quite little to him. And all this time, I don't know what way I've gone under, but a few things have left me thinking, especially reviews of like Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. Like, this can't happen because it doesn't make canonical sense for Coco Diablo to be that behind the costumes in Where Are You? And it's like, well, in Mystery Incorporated, Velma can't be a lesbian because she was into Johnny Bravo, so this isn't canon. And so it's kind of like there's a whole discussion about canon to be had with Scooby-Doo. And I want to get your take on this first, because I know I've prattled on about Q&As and like introducing this topic. So what's your take on this? I'll give you
So
the floor.
do you want to explain to the audience the difference between canon and non-canon, just in case everyone gets confused?
I mean, that's the thing. I like that thought, except I don't know what it means for Scooby-Doo in terms of, say, if we were talking about something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where you've got a branch timeline, things affect other things. So Kevin Feige can instantly go, you know, that little kid in Iron Man 2? Well, that's canonically Peter Parker. Or, this is how Howard Stark canonically, you know what I mean? Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that you can slot into. Whereas, what is canon for Scooby Doo? Is it from 1969, Scooby Doo, Where Are You? Is that the canon and everything surrounding that
So
contradicts that canon or not? Because what
the
is canon
way
for
that
Scooby Doo?
I've the way that I've sorted it out is it part of the main franchise or does it go off in a different direction? Is it part of it or is it not? That's probably the best way you can probably do it with Scooby-Doo. But then there's all these different timelines and different multiverses because the way when I did the Scooby-Doo timeline, when I did it a few years back when I read it all down, I came to the conclusion that okay, Where Are You and the new Scooby-Doo movies are basically parallel to each other on the same timeline. But then in 2000, was it 2002 when the What's New Scooby-Doo
Yeah,
came
what's
out? That technically is its own new series. So it's pretty much like the Where Are You for that generation. So it's a new timeline. So basically it's not even part of the same timeline as Where Are You. So it's under it. with its new timeline. That's how I worked out. Then you got the movies that correspond with it because of the same art style. And then you got movies like Curse of the 13th Ghost, which really confuse everyone because where the hell do you put them? Do they go in the Where Are You timeline because they're before What's New, so it makes sense having on that timeline. So I don't think Scooby Doo has a canon for say because the way I looked at it, and probably the best way to do it is to think of different timelines on the Scooby Doo scale, and that's where they fit in. So when people say, "Oh, Velma can't be a lesbian because she was into Shaggy and Johnny Bravo," you could say in a different timeline that is possible because we don't know where that movie is based on, which timeline it matches up from, because the whole Scooby universe isn't set in one universe. It doesn't actually have a complete timeline because if you watch um what was it? I think it was Curse of the 13th Ghost movie where they basically mentioned how long it's been, and it's like that doesn't really make sense if you look at all the other movies. You're telling me not even a year has passed since then? That doesn't make anything right. So that already explains that it's a different timeline, where all the other ones are on their own separate timeline, but like the Marvel multiverse theory. So that's the way I've concluded it and went around doing the Scooby timeline, is that I've throughout the canon and the non-canon, because it doesn't work. If anything, it gives you more headaches trying to argue about things that don't happen and be like, right, where do they fit in their own
Yeah.
universe? And that's the best probable sense. So there's a universe where the Johnny Bravo special, that was the special cartoon one. So that again isn't really an episode that fits anywhere. So it's its own sense fits on the Where Are You timeline, along with Reluctant Werewolf, Ghoul School, and Curse of 13 Ghost. That's where that fits in. But then you got the movie where it shows Velma attracted to another female. That's probably its own new storyline on a whole new universe level. So again, it can happen because we can't actually distinguish which universe is from which one, or if they're part of the same universe. Because if they're all from the same universe, then I'm sorry, but they managed to solve all those mysteries
Yeah.
in a year, and it doesn't actually make any sense. Because if you look how many days they went through a certain episode or a series or movies and that, and you add that to a year, they must have over 1,000 days in one year for that even be possible. So for me, I just disregard the canon, throw out the window and be like, okay, how many timelines are there in Scooby Doo? So, which is I came to the theory of calling it the Scoobverse many years ago. And that's the best way to say it. Like, okay, where does this fit on the timeline? Is it in this universe? Is it in that one? And then every new series is like a new timeline being introduced. That's the best way I can think about it. And then sometimes they might match up to where are to the others. So then they might cross paths. But some universes have like imagine there's like parallel worlds, and if the timelines match up but on a different timeline, they probably have the same parallels, but then they have different outcomes. So that's when you go look at parallel shit, and then it gets confusing. So you got multiple universes, and you have parallel universes, and then you're like, okay, they obviously look like they're on the same timeline, but they're not. And then you go like, okay, they're on a parallel one, and then it goes back to the Doctor Who episode where you got Earth, their Earth against the parallel
Yeah,
Earth.
like Pete's World, where
Yeah.
it's the same, but there's Zeppelins, or they don't
So,
have kids. Like,
so when you think about multiverses and parallel world with Scooby-Doo, then you can get the whole idea where these come from. And that's the whole theory behind it, in my sense. It makes more sense, but it's really confusing because you're gonna have a lot of time on your hands. And when I did it about I think about 5 years ago when I started it, that was 5 years ago. Now there's more stuff, so it's like I never actually got back into completing it, and now there's all these parallel stuff. So yeah, that's
yeah.
the best way that I can debunk it all, is that it's through parallels or multiverse theory.
Yeah, I'm
That's
inclined to
that's
agree
how
with
it makes
you.
sense.
Because I mean, there is obviously other reasons why people want to, go online and say that Velma can't be a lesbian. But I think that in terms of like, say, if we're not thinking from that mindset, but we're thinking rationally, it's a little bit like I think some Scooby fans can see worlds in black and white and not think about any other possibilities. So they'll say stuff about Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, like, Velma can't be a lesbian because she liked Johnny Bravo, so this isn't canon. But then it's kind of like nowhere in Trick or Treat Scooby Doo does it say Velma is a lesbian. Like, she happens to be attracted to Coco Diablo, but she could also be attracted to Coco Diablo and Johnny Bravo at the same time. Like, she could be a bisexual character like that. Those people do exist, and that is a possibility. Like, no, I don't even think the original intention for Mystery Incorporated. I mean, the creatives have said this as subtext, so we can take it like that. But I don't think in Mystery Incorporated it would have specifically stated that Velma wasn't into guys. Maybe it was. I know that was the intention, but again, there's a lot of things that could take some type of nuance. And the same thing with James Gunn. Like, he outright said that a version of Scooby-Doo Where Are You happened before both the 2002 movie and Monsters Unleashed, but he said a version. So already like 20 years ago, 20 odd years ago now, James Gunn has canonized different versions of similar things happening. And you can even see that throughout Scooby-Doo history. Like, the way that Shaggy and Scooby meet in Scoob is quite similar when you think about it to the way that they meet in The Mystery Begins. And that's kind of a whole issue in and of itself. Like, you already debunk an idea of a canon when you consider that the gang can't have met in Pup Named Scooby-Doo, then met again in Scoob, and then have Daphne and Velma meet again for the first time separately in their spin-off, and then for them to meet again separately in the book series, and then for them to also meet again for the same time, like in like Mystery Begins. It's
Yeah.
like, how many times can you meet someone for the first time? There has
And I
to be
think the pup named
timelines.
Scooby Doo, they did it at the time where around the 90s, a lot of shows like the Looney Tunes kids, everything was doing shows in kids formats where they were kids. And so Scooby Doo did the pup named Scooby Doo, which really confused everyone because there was no indication of how they met or how their origins went. We only had pup named Scooby Doo. So technically at the time, that's the origins. But like I said, multiverse theory, Putney Scooby Doo, then it's Where Are You? And then it's Roll Up and Werewolf Ghoul School, where they all go their own separate ways, do their own stuff, and then come back again for the recent movies like Return of Zombie Island, um, Curse of the 13th Ghost. Like, again, all me up on the same timeline stretch. But then you got like the Scoob movie. Again, shows the different origins, which doesn't make any sense to Putney Scooby Doo one. So, in conclusion, that's a new universe. But then well, then you have Mystery Begins, and then we have the sequel to that one. Again, where did that go? Because they showed the origins of Mystery Begins, how they met Scoob, which is totally. You could say it's the same on how they met in the Scoob movie, but is it the same now, or is that like a new movie itself, like a new timeline? So, yeah, that's the confusing thing. The only if they did the Scoob Holiday Hunt movie. But at least we know there's a sequel to the Scoob movie, so it's easy to fit
Yeah.
on the timeline. But with Scoob and the mystery begins, it's like you gotta be really nitpicky. Like, do you want it before, after? Does it make sense? I don't really think it does because the rest of the movie doesn't really match up to the other two. So I feel like it's a whole new timeline in general.
I mean, that isn't to say that there is no continuous timelines within projects, because
No.
clearly sometimes there is. Like, clearly Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated season one is 1,000,000% canon to Mystery Incorporated season two, and vice versa. But you can't really say the same for others, and this isn't excusing plot holes or retcons, but I could almost argue that Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island is not canon to Scooby-Doo Return to Zombie Island and vice versa, because, not excusing Return to Zombie Island, but they specifically say in this, when it happened way back when, Daphne was just doing a school project, but you can clearly see that she was an adult reporter in the original. So it's kind of like, well, let's assume then that Return to Zombie Island is not a sequel to our Return to our Zombie Island, but more a sequel to that universe's Zombie Island, where the gang are still in school. This was all a school project. Monsters aren't real, and it was left unresolved. Doesn't make that movie any better for us in our world where we're watching things. But I think even then, like, you can't even take things that are supposed sequels necessarily to be canon to each other. Whereas Loch Ness Monster is canon to Chill Out, and Chill Out is canon to Loch Ness Monster. and yet there's no indication that they are sequels to each other besides and same animation.
Yeah,
So there is so much weirdness with that.
because I know in the Returns on the Island and Curse of the 13 Ghosts movie, they're like sequels themselves. And they've even mentioned the gang's age because they can get arrested if they falsely accuse people. And we already know that it's under a year since they've done stuff together. So I can hardly, if you just look at the Puppet Scooby Doo to Where Are You to the Ghoul School, Rutland Werewolf, and Curse of 13 Ghosts, leading up to those two movies, under a year has passed through those stretch. Makes sense. That's the full timeline for that universe. So I can hardly say that, that universe is correct on a timeline scale, but then all the others, if you look at the gang's age, they're still like 17, so they're still like
Oh yeah.
kids. So you know they're different universes because it was continuing. Like if it was continuous series and you saw them get older, they'd be like 30 or 40 by now.
I guess though,
They'd be old. So I can only hardly say like all this stuff is like different universes, and
yeah.
we're seeing different realities of the gang. So that debunks the whole fear of like, oh, this is canon, this ain't canon, because it doesn't work with Scooby Doo. Because for that to work, you have to be like, okay, is this the same continuous time stream? Yes or no? And it's not. Like take Dragon Ball for example. You can tell which is canon and not canon because you know which is the direct continuation timeline. So you can distinguish it. Like Broly, you know, we've got the Broly movies and that. You know that's not part of the main show, so you can debunk it straight away. And then with Scooby Doo, you can't because you have to be like, okay, is this part of the main show? What's part of the main show? Can these all be part of the main show? No. So
To be
again,
fair though,
it
what
doesn't
is the
work.
main show? Like, is it Where Are You? Is that because it was the first, is that the main show? And anything to contradict that? Because I don't mind that being the main show. I'm completely on board with that. But then I'd argue that stuff hasn't really been canon for that for quite a long time. They may not contradict stuff directly, but tonally, like I know that because if we are to take Velma being a lesbian in Mystery Incorporated on the words of the creators, then fine. But one thing that they also said is that series was designed to be a prequel to Scooby Doo, Where Are You? And then it's kind of
Well,
like, well, are we then to assume that the gang went on these adventures, seeing the exact same monsters that they already knew existed in the museum from their hometown, and at no point do they say, "Huh, well, we know who the culprit is," or "Haven't we seen this guy before?" Like, even then, stuff doesn't quite work out.
yeah, because I know everything before 2002. Before watching Scooby Doo, everything before that is part of the same time stream. That's what I've come to realize. Everything before then is part of the main
Does that
time
include
stream.
13 Ghosts?
Yes, because of the movie Curse of the 13 Ghosts and Returns on the Island being continuous between each other, so we can safely guarantee now that 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo is part of the Where Are You timeline. Because before I didn't put it on there, but when the movie came out, it actually made the sense because it was basically a continuation movie because of the sheriff being the villain. So it made sense that we can link 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo to the Where Are You time string. So that's where I came to the conclusion that with the Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo show and everything like that, everything before 2002 is part of that. That includes witches, ghosts, alien invaders, all part of the Where Are You timeline
I can see that.
until a new movie comes out debunking Cyber Chase or Alien Invaders, unless something comes out that puts them in a different timeline. For now, they fit perfectly together. So anything after 2002 with what it's going to do is a new timeline, and then the next series after that is a new timeline. So the series is the easiest to distinguish a new timeline because when you put the series next to under each other, you can see the age of the group is the exact same. So that already shows that it's a new timeline. It's not until like the first timeline, Where Are You? Is like I'll call it the prime one because I think Where Are You as it's the first is the
Mm,
prime
we
timeline
can call it Prime.
where everything lines up and you can definitely make the information from the latest movies, The Returns Online and The Curse of 13 Ghosts, makes sense being a year apart. That debunks that. But everything else is confusing as hell because then you gotta like watch everything in detail, look at all the movies, write down key notes, check that with the series, make sure it all lines up correctly. All the specials, even the third party ones, like the crossover ones, you gotta watch them and make sure that they fit somewhere. It's just like so that's why like, I don't look at Canon with Scooby Doo. It's more like, is this part of this timeline or not, or is it part of the same time stream? And like I said, parallels as well. That gets confusing because then each multiverse has a parallel version to themselves. So that's like double the extra work ethic on that one. So
Yeah, I mean, even me, even though I'm pretty anti-timeline or anti-canon, will say that I'm not immune from theories. Like my head canon, my theory is that Scooby-Doo and Crypto 2 is canon to Scooby-Doo on the Cyber Chase for probably one of the most bizarre reasons that is kind of a bit of a nothing burger. But if you look at the Scooby snack design from Cyber Chase and Crypto, I think they are quite similar unless I'm mistaken. But also, one of the villains, or the villain from the start, said the magnets worked on the Phantom virus, like kryptonite to Superman. And we can make references about Superman. It doesn't make us canon to the Man of
yeah,
Steel universe. But the fact that Scooby-Doo, versions of Scooby-Doo, does exist with Superman, you could almost take that villain's reference to Superman in the same way that we would reference someone who is real in our universe, like David Attenborough or Bill Gates, like or something like that. Like if we went to some guy and said, that guy's got hair like Donald Trump, like that could put us canonically in the same universe as that person. It's like it's a little bit like that. So yeah, there are some weird things, and like you say, there are parallels as well. I mean, to play devil's advocate for a minute, there are a lot of people that say that you can rationalize a timeline order if you take things pre-reset and post-reset, meaning the reset that happened at the end of Mystery Incorporated. How far do you take that?
okay. So when I discuss it in my theory on paper, I put it before Where Are You because it kind of makes sense them starting a journey because when you watch Where Are You, they don't actually explain why they're on the journey. They're just going somewhere solving
Mm,
mysteries. And when you watch Mission Incorporated, it makes sense towards the end of the film because everything's changed in the world. So they're going on a journey to find what's changed. Are there any more mysteries? And the monsters they dealt with were real, but when they left Crystal Cove and explored the world, leading to Where Are You, all the monsters were people in suits. So it kind of like makes sense they made a world monster free. So that's how I put it before
mm.
um Where Are You? Just
And,
because of the ending.
and
But that's
another interesting
but
one
that's the
like
only one that
that.
done the ending though, because no other series has done it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I guess another kind of you want to call it an interference with the timeline. Like we can call it the sacred timeline, like Marvel if you like. But when Dean Winchester in Scooby Natural releases a real supernatural monster in the timeline of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? That could have pretty much made a branch timeline where monsters can be real. I think that's another interesting theory as well. Again, there is no canon. I think the main point about this topic is that for a lot of Scooby fans, maybe we won't change a lot of their minds. Maybe they'll keep on insisting on canon or things. But I do think that this is like a perfect allegory. This is kind of what the Spider-Verse movie was trying to say. Like, there's always going to be some people that don't like something or don't accept something because a story always has to be one way. It has to have these story beats, it have to include this character in a certain way, or it doesn't belong in the canon. It interferes with a canon event and it needs to be erased. I think that was a perfect movie to sum up the way some fans can be with a canon, especially for a series that isn't long running as such. There's always different variations. It's a little bit like the antithesis to Doctor Who, which again people insist isn't canon, but it's kind of always continuation, so it kind of is. Whereas Scooby-Doo doesn't really have that. It's not Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And we're on season 50 of it now. There's all different versions and different variations. So I would say this quite insistently. If a movie that you are enjoying has everything, it does everything right, except it doesn't fit in the canon, just ignore it. Because I know that there's other reasons why people don't like movies. Like, if you don't like Return to Zombie Island, that's fine. I don't think either of us like it because of the writing, the tone, the animation style, and pretty much everything about the mystery, right? But say if they did an absolutely perfect Zombie Island sequel, except Bo's name was B because someone couldn't pronounce it properly. Just let that type of stuff go. You know what I mean? Like the canon isn't all there is, and I think the best way to enjoy these stories is just to take them as they are. But if you do want to try and fit it into a timeline later, yeah, all power to you. I think at some stage I would like to try and map out the whole multiverse because I think that's pretty much what it is, not a linear timeline, but a multiverse. I do really want to try and map that out, but
Because you
who
can start
knows?
it easy with the series, but then you got the
Oh yeah.
movies, the specials, and you're like, okay, where the fuck do these go? And you're there for ages. And I started like 5 years ago, and I was like, oh god damn, I'm gonna regret redoing it again because there's like more stuff to it, more movies. You go watch the movies, hear and look at any details that would match that series. And it's like it's a lot of work that goes into it, just trying to figure out where it all goes.
It
But in
would
the end
almost
of
be better to like start with what can't be in the same universe. Like we know that like The Mystery Begins cannot be a direct prequel to 2002 and Monsters Unleashed because unless some new technology comes out, I don't think Haley Kiyoko could age into Linda Cardellini. We you know what I mean? Like we also can take the Daphne and Velma movie and Scoob in their own like they could be loosely connected, but I don't think so. But they could be parallel to each other because the laws of that universe is crazy futuristic, and yet they've still got that retro style. Like it would almost help just saying what cannot be connected to each other. That would maybe be the easiest way to go about things. Like we know that what's new Scooby Doo, as much as we like to say, cannot be canon to Legend of the Vampire, as much as it insists on it, cannot be canon to Witch's Ghost. Because unless again we develop some crazy technology, I don't think one of the Hex girls could suddenly change race. Unless they could you know what? Could it be a reference to Michael Jackson, or am I just they probably is, but you know what I mean? Unless that happened, I don't think you can consider them canon to each other. Again, Legend of the Vampire has a reference to the game from Cyberchase, but that looks more like a Game Boy version, whereas Cyberchase was messing with like Xbox Series X level stuff. So again, we could spend hours talking about the different timelines.
it. And it makes sense looking at it through timelines rather than arguing about, oh, it's canon, it's not canon. Because before you even question whether it's canon or not, you have to be 100% sure if this is the timeline that you're talking about. And with Scooby Doo, there is no distinct or direct timeline because every single year there's something new that they come together with. Okay, we got to do a new series for this generation, new timeline. That's all it is. So you can't really say, "Oh, that's not canon." That's canon. So how can you prove that this is a sacred timeline? Because if you say that, then it means everything else is connected to each other, but it's not. It doesn't make no sense. You're telling me the gang doesn't age? I know Shaggy's the oldest and all that, but then you got to watch behind the scenes. Scooby Doo looks special in that to get a good look into the gang's characteristics, and there's the books as well, and the comics. It'd be there forever just
Oh
trying to
yeah,
figure out
that's the thing.
everything.
Like
Yeah.
expanded media on its own is like think about all the comics that get published, the books for children, the kids' books. It's like you gotta try and pick a lane at some point. I have no problem someone saying that Where Are You is the main timeline because it's the first. That could be the main timeline, but then it's like, well, look at the level of technology in that series, and then look at Cyber Chase, which a lot of people like, and yet there's not too much of an age discrepancy there. And then yeah, I just think it's the absolute wrong show to get riled up about in terms of canon. I mean, I get riled up about canon for stuff like Doctor Who and Marvel because they specifically either said this is a continuing story or this will factor into that. They put year numbered dates onto it. But for Scooby Doo, I don't know. I don't think it matters too much. But yeah. I suppose that wraps up this section here, the penultimate episode. Once again, we are looking for Q&A questions. We have quite a lot, so we might need to spread it out until like two recordings. I'm definitely going to have to bring some drinks,
And
some
as I said,
snacks,
ask anything,
anything.
anything. You know, there is no limitation on what type of questions you can ask.
Even
They
if
can
you
be
want to be
what.
rude to us, like we
Yeah,
can do
yeah.
it.
We can take it. We're not snowflakes. We can take whatever you can throw at us.
I guess though, here's I'll end it with this because some of the questions are going to take a little bit more prep than others. So either I'll tell you when we get them, or those can be part twos, and I'll like edit them all together in one go. The
Yeah.
one question that we got, which I'm really looking forward to, is who we would cast in a live action Scooby Doo movie if we could only use actors from the UK. And I
Oh,
think that's really cool. If we were to do like a
oh,
multiversal, like
oh
Scooby-Doo
God.
UK movie,
UK actors.
I think that would be.
Technically, we could take Tom Holland.
Oh yeah, and you did that, didn't you? Ah,
Yeah,
so
so we can take him.
I don't think any of mine can stay the same. I'll have to
Yes.
go back to the drawing board there, but we can claim Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield if we need. There's so many that you wouldn't
And screw it,
expect.
we're throwing KSI just because of the views.
Yes. Oh, and we can also have
We've
Benedict Cumberbatch as Vincent Van Gogh. We can do it. We can do
got
it.
an easy
So,
one.
yeah, thanks so much for that. Please comment them down below. Mark, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me over on my YouTube page at Mark Marsh, or head over to Twitter at IgosLuigi, or Instagram at MarkMarsh94, and also twitch.tv at IgosLuigi.
Hey, it's me, Luigi. So you can find me nowhere, in zero places. Actually, that's a lie. I have recently started putting all of like the clips and stuff on TikTok. Now I don't like TikTok. I don't like using it. I don't
You abandoned
understand it.
social media to
I'm
join
too
TikTok.
old. But I can acknowledge the reach and power of TikTok, and there's some things that we've uncovered on the series that I believe that Scooby-Doo fans en masse deserve to see and not try and keep it in our limited box of YouTube. So I will leave that linked in the description down below. I'm not going to be actively creating new content on there. So I'm not going to be like doing little dances just like Scooby-Doo or doing Scooby hunts at yard sales. Like I'll leave that stuff up to the yard sale stuff to people like Tristan Sacred, who's doing an amazing job. But I'm just going to be using content that we've already done and that's going to be out there. So yeah, hopefully before we retire, that'll be a hub for some trending stuff. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the last show ever. Thank you.
Take care.